Anaxa has easily been one of the most captivating figures in Amphorius thus far. Not only is he quite the performer, but he also provides a lot of insight into the nature of reality in Amphorius. In this video, I will discuss Anaxa's philosophy, the philosophy of Anaxagoras, the figure he was inspired by, and what we can know about Amphorius from this. Also, for the sake of this video, I will refer to Star Rail's Anaxagoras as Anaxa and the real Anaxagoras by the full name. To understand Anaxagoras, it is helpful for one to understand the philosophers who came before him, specifically Thales and Parmenides. The name Thales may ring a bell for those who paid close attention to the 3.2 portion of the quest. In our world, Thales of Miletus is considered the first philosopher. In Star Rail, there is a historical figure in Amphorius who was considered the first scholar, and who Anaxa claims he wishes to follow in the footsteps of. This is Thalesis. Famously for Thales, water was the principle behind all things in existence. Everything comes from water. This may sound odd at first, but the reasons which led Thales to this conclusion are the important parts of his philosophy. Water is something which can easily be seen in 3 states of matter. It can take the shape of anything which contains it. Additionally, according to sources like Aristotle and Plato, Thales claimed that all things are full of God. This is to say that the cause of movement in all things is soul, and that soul is in all the world. While there is no mention of Parmenides in the main story, there is an NPC with the same name who has dialogue which vaguely explains his philosophy. What's important to know about Parmenides is that he believed that in reality change cannot exist. The water in a river cannot move, the arrow shot from a bow cannot hit its target, and the weather cannot go from warm and sunny to cold and rainy. These are all merely appearances. In reality, everything is unchanging. Before I get into his proof for this, I do want to note how each of the 2 philosophers just discussed had differing views on change. Thales was reliant on the senses to understand the world as it appeared, thus aiming to explain change, whereas Parmenides reasoned against its very existence. Anaxagoras' view will synthesize these ideas, and I think the synthesis of these ideas aligns thematically with what we know about Amphorius, that it cycles through the same eras, a mix of change and sameness. Anyways, to make sense of Parmenides, take the sentence, P is not Q. To make this claim about subject P, by saying that its existence is not, is meaningless. What is not cannot be, and being is exactly what the is in P is not Q is predicating. So to say that there is non-being is illogical. This is the problem if one wishes to affirm change in the world. Change requires non-being. For the weather to turn from raining to not raining, this non-being, the lack of rain, must be. This is a problem if one wishes to give any sort of reliability to the senses, as our senses are what lead us to believe that the world changes. This is where Anaxagoras and Empedocles, who is also the real-life Anaxagoras' predecessor, come into play. I won't discuss Empedocles, but I do find it a nice touch that Amphorius draws on inspiration from a variety of pre-Socratics. Just as Anaxa can be credited with bringing philosophy to Amphorius through the founding of Neusporism and his vow to sow the seeds of suspicion in the next rendition of Amphorius, Anaxagoras is partially to credit for bringing philosophy to Athens. There are a lot of other parallels between the 2 Anaxagoras's. Anaxagorae? Sure. For one, like any good ancient Greek philosopher, Anaxagoras was exiled for impiety. Anaxa seems to live up to his namesake in this, but there are more intriguing similarities. According to the Decree of the 7 Sages, written by the scholar Herodoton, whose name has a striking resemblance to the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, the focus of Neusporism is to seek out the true nature of life itself, which is very much in line with the interest of ancient Greek philosophers. Basically, what Anaxa does is metaphysics, and he does this through the study of alchemy. I find alchemy to be an interesting choice for his method of study because the language of Anaxagoras' philosophy is evocative of alchemy and chemistry. In explanation of his philosophy, words like mixture, separation, rotation, ingredients, and seeds will turn up often. In fact, Anaxa even calls the Chrysos heirs' souls the very essence of this world and tiny seeds which hold records of a person's memories. Additionally, some important things to know about Neusporism and its relevance to Anaxagoras' philosophy is the meaning of nous. In Star Rail, we know nous as the aeon of erudition. If one conflates mind and soul, it's easy to see how this sense of the word nous aligns with the standard definition of nous as mind or intellect in ancient Greek philosophy. However, it's unclear exactly what Anaxa means when he uses the term soul. Just as in real life, soul can be an ambiguous term. We know that in Amphorius, one's soul can exist separate from their body. Through seeing Anaxa function, we also know that a person does not completely lose their mental capacities or sense of identity when their soul is separated from them. However, we also know that souls can be conscious, or at least sentient, as we saw during the segment in Styxia. For these reasons, the soul in Anaxa's philosophy seem to be similar to one's own mind and intellect, but distinct. However, when we speak of nous in the same sense as Anaxagoras, we are referring to mind or intellect in a more absolute sense. Nous is the mind which moves all other minds and souls. Nousporism aims to understand the soul, and to understand something, you should know the cause of it. Nous, being this mover of ensouled things, is fundamental to this study. Anaxagoras aimed to reconcile the fact that things appear to change with Parmenides' idea that change is not possible. He accepts Parmenides' idea that nothing can come in and out of being. However, he uses the idea of ingredients, which are basic elements of reality. These ingredients are mixed and rearranged into different combinations which contribute to what a thing is. In this way, there is a portion of everything in everything. Things may appear to change or go in and out of being, but in reality, this is just the rearrangement of these more fundamental, unchanging elements of reality. For this reason, rebirth is a fitting way of describing Amphorius' cycles, because it appeals to the idea that the same elements of the previous cycle will become part of the new one. Other ways in which this principle is referenced is through Anaxa's law of equivalent exchange. The idea that something must be given if something is to be gained is reflective of the commitment to avoid claiming that anything comes in and out of being. The fundamental ingredients of Anaxagoras' philosophy never rise or fall in number. They are merely redistributed between things in the world. There is never more or less of the basic ingredients in the world than there was at any other time. There is no genuine creation or destruction. Or in other words, you can't get something out of nothing and nothing out of something. This is roughly similar to the idea from Parmenides' philosophy, which Anaxagoras aims to maintain. Anaxa's insistence that information be dealt out equally among two parties is a reference to this very philosophy. You might be wondering at this point, what moves all these ingredients, and what is their cause? The answer to this is the very focus of the recent Amphorius Trailblaze quest, soul. Ensouled things can act because of soul, and nous rules over all soul. Nous is the one exception to the rule that everything is in everything. Nous is not part of this everything. It's fitting, then, that the world-bearing titan is called Kephali, which is the Greek word for head having the connotations of intellect or mind, this being the titan which moves humanity, which is presumably ensouled. Lastly, I want to consider the place of Anaxa's philosophy in the Star Rail universe. I often question why Hoyoverse used Anaxagoras specifically to base a character off of. While the idea of nous is present in very much ancient Greek philosophy, Anaxagoras is specifically it functions as the first cause, similar to a divine creator. If nous is taken to hold the same function in Amphorius, this could suggest a more primary role over the remembrance and destruction in the creation and sustaining of Amphorius' cycles. Featured on Star Rail's wiki page for Fuli is a loading screen quote which states that intellection equals existence, thus memory is the evidence of existence. This not only draws a very close connection between the erudition and the remembrance, but also parallels Anaxagoras' philosophy, nous being the intellect similar to a first mover. At the same time, this places the erudition as ontologically prior to the remembrance. If we continue to equate nous with existence, then it is also reasonable to say that it is prior to the destruction. This embodiment of entropy is considered to be a natural offshoot of existence, but cannot be without it. There must be some order which can be grasped. It's also interesting to note the role that time plays in Amphorius. For change to happen, there must be time, but in Amphorius there is no day and night cycle, possibly representing a lack of change as seen in Parmenidean ideas. I also questioned whether the nature of Amphorius is reflective of the rest of the cosmos. We might guess that souls exist outside Amphorius due to the fact that the Trailblazer had a soul or a soul equivalent piece of them which they were separated from. I'm honestly not sure what to make of this yet, but perhaps there will be some interesting developments on that front in the future. Anyways, I'm always looking for more philosophy to discuss in this game, so if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing and joining the Twitchlings, and whatever you go on to do, do it well.